Right then, let's do this. Welcome to Socially Distant Discover Nature, episode 4. This week we are continuing the theme of birds and birdsong. But first, you'll notice we are even more indoors than last time. Now, we tried to film outside, and although it looks nice, it was really windy. So, tried to film in the conservatory and started to physically melt and dissolve into a puddle of goo. So we abandoned that and carted the world's heaviest chair upstairs, and we are in my office with this marvellous blank wall. Ambient green, I think the colour is called. Very blank, but we'll just have to make do, and I'll try plaster a load of bird footage over my face and the wall so we don't have to look at either of them for too long. Yes. First of all, let's start with our usual catch-up. And we had Emma from near St. Nick's sent in this beautiful photo of a butterfly, and it's a comma butterfly. Quite a distinct shape. You can see the kind of frilly patterns, a bit like a kind of leafy shape around the edges of the wingtips. The reason it's called a comma, I can't actually see in this photograph, but on the underside of the wings there's a little white marking, almost like a punctuation mark, like a comma, and that's where it gets its name from. We've also had Maria from St. Nick's, who's been going in, checking to make sure the site's still safe and accessible, and she got a little bit of footage of this really cute rabbit just nibbling on some dandelions, and I think that's something we can enjoy. Maria was saying, oh, it's not a very rare species or particularly interesting, but in these crazy times, there's something very comforting about seeing a little cute rabbit eating leaves. So let's just dwell in the moment there. Last week we had a video all the way from Argentina. This week's video special guest is a little bit close to home. This is from Leeds. This is David from Eco Sapien, who went out for a walk and found some interesting wild flowers.
So I'm out on my daily exercise, and I thought it'd be a good opportunity to do some woodland plant ID. These are plants that you'll find in the Northern Hemisphere, so let's have a look. So this little white flower here is called the wood anemone. It's a member of the buttercup family, that's Ranunculaceae, and it's really easy to ID. It's got 6 or 7 petals, and its stem leaves divide into 3 equal parts. So this is another member of the buttercup family, Ranunculaceae, and it's called Lesser celandine. Its leaves are a bit different from the wood anemone. They're solid, smaller towards the basal of the plant. You've also got the flowers, which are yellow, and the petals usually number around about 7 to 12. And this is wild garlic, or ramsons. It's again a very common one that you'll find in woodlands in Northern Europe, and it's very distinctive. It has that very distinctive garlicky smell, and it's one that is pretty prolific in springtime. So these ones haven't flowered yet, but when they do, they form what you call an umbel. It's basically a flower with lots of flowers, and they're white, quite small. But just remember that garlicky smell, and you can actually eat this stuff.
Also a special mention to ecotherapy coordinator Kathy, who sent in some amazing pictures of flowers, daffodils that she snapped while out and about, and a video of her garden. And I think this is a male hairy-footed flower bee. And there's also a little way that their family brought some nature inside the house with this amazing butterfly motif. Absolutely incredible. Must have had a steady hand to do that. I'm not sure I could have done that. So a very quick recap. Last week we looked at, can I count? Maybe the sun's gone to my head. 6, yes. 6 ways or 6 things to look for in a bird song or call that might help you narrow it down and identify what it is. So the first one, number one, is the nature of the sound. How does it make you feel? Happy, sad, melancholy, existential ennui? I don't really know what that means, Google it. That's the first one. Number two was noticing any patterns, sort of repeating phrases, anything like that. Number three is the volume. How loud is this bird? Really quiet, really loud, somewhere in between. Number four, where's the sound coming from? Is it high? Is it low? Is it on your shoulder saying pretty Polly? Any of those factors should be considered. Number five, how many birds are making a noise? If birds are singing territorially, usually it's just one. If they're calling and chattering as a group, there could be, well, anywhere between two and many. How many does make a flock? Who knows? Finally, number six, if I've got my counting right, is can you actually see the bird? Which is a really shortcut way of associating the visual image of the bird with the distinct sound coming out of his mouth. And I want to introduce a seventh thing to look out for, courtesy of a friend of the show, Sean, and he sent in some footage and audio of a woodpecker. Here's some more sounds of a woodpecker from Emma in York. So this is a great spotted woodpecker, and it's drumming away against a tree, and that is its way of kind of displaying and calling and advertising its territory. So I think the seventh group we'll call non-vocalizations, so sounds that birds can make not coming out of their syrinx, their voice box. So this can include the woodpecker drumming away. You could also be listening out for tap, tap, tapping in the undergrowth. That might be a song thrush, bashing a snail against its favourite stone, known as an anvil. A loud kind of crunching and crashing of leaves that feels like a wild boar, usually turns out to be a blackbird. So these are just other sounds in the environment that you can, well, listen out for. And it's more data. Data, data, data. You cannot build bricks without clay. That's more or less a Sherlock Holmes quote verbatim, but I'm sorry, purists, if I got it wrong. That's the recap of the now 7 different things to listen out for when identifying bird sounds. We'll have a quick recap over what bird songs and sounds we actually learnt last session. So, the first one was the Chiffchaff, which says its name. Chiff, chiff, chaff, chaff, chiff, chiff, chaff, chaff. The second one on our list was the song thrush, which has its repeated patterns. All sorts of phrases it can repeat, from 2 to 5 times, maybe even more. Things like did-it-it, 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 do-it, do-it, do-it. The third one was my absolute favourite. I'd probably say that about all the birds, and I'd probably say that I say that about all the birds. I'm speaking very quickly today. I'm going to slow down. So the third one that we learnt last week was the blackbird, which is this beautiful, melodious, laid-back, rich song. Absolutely gorgeous. You could just eat it. It's so delicious. And that brings me to what I've been seeing out and about, or not out and about, as the case may be. I'm starting to befriend a blackbird in my garden, who I've nicknamed Beaky. Beaky Blackbird. Beaky is a male blackbird who's quite brave, quite bold, or maybe he just doesn't consider me a threat, which is quite heartening. He's been coming closer and closer, looks at me, warbles a bit, and I'll go get some dried fruit, put it out for them, and he'll come and eat quite close. It's quite nice to make a connection, although I get the impression it's more a case of him taming me rather than the other way around. So I'm quite happy to be tamed in this instance. Another featured bird sound from a previous episode, which upstaged me, I think as far back as episode 1, is the greenfinch. Now, we have heard the call before, but let's discuss it a little bit more. To me, well, I call it the ray gun bird, because there's a bit of its song that sounds a bit like a sort of cheesy 1960s Captain Kirk ray gun effect, like pew 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 pew, pew 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 pew. And occasionally it does this really sort of nasally wheeze, sort of makes me think of the Monsters Inc. I think it's the Slug Secretary character. Mike Wazowski! So, ray gun, and then Secretary Slug. Beep, 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 beep. So, if you've stopped laughing at me enough, you can go outside and try listen out for that. Maybe you'll hear it. And my recommendation is draw the bird song, come up with your own stupid, silly ways to remember it, and the more ridiculous, the better. And my consolation for acting so ridiculous is that it might help impart some knowledge. Who knows? I'd like to now introduce you to the sounds of 3 more fairly common birds that you might hear out and about, or even just sort of opening a bedroom window. The first one is the blue tit. One of the main sounds it makes is a kind of 3 high-pitched notes in quick succession, followed by this churring, chuckling noise, sort of seep, seep, seep. I can't really replicate that, so I'm just going to play you some of it and see what you think. The only way I've managed to remember that is it's like a kind of cartoon old man from a, I don't know, an old film who's going yeah, I can only apologise for that noise. The second bird I'd like to introduce you to is both very easy to learn and very hard, and this is the great tit. So this is, I think, what I referred to as the licorice all sorts bird after those delicious sweets. Many bright, almost primary colours. You've got some yellow in there and some whites and some blacks. Very distinctive, and its main call is very distinctive as well. It almost is like an unruly pupil yelling, "Teacher, teacher, teacher." It's sort of got that 2-note thing. E-e, e-e, e-e. So listen for yourself. See what it reminds you of. The reason I said it was both really easy to learn and really hard is the teacher, teacher, teacher. Very easy to get in your head. But grey tits have a great repertoire of songs and sounds. They can sound like all different things, and it's a running joke in the world of birding that if you hear something and you don't quite know what it is, the chances are it will be a grey tit. I didn't know if this was true or not, but when I've been out in Acombe Woods in York and I've heard something, not quite sure what it was, if I track it down and get a good look at it, I don't know, 70% of the time it's a grey tit. So they do have a big range. Finally, I'd like you to meet the mystery bird from last week from the sound drawing exercise. We'll play that again just to remind you. Really high pitched and quick. And then a period of silence, and then it starts again. Alright, let's see. Quite jagged. And then silence. quite messy song, I think. This is the dunnock. Now the dunnock is most of the year seen skulking low in the undergrowth, prattling around, prattling around, that's quite judgmental, looking around for food. It's small, it's brown and grey, it's easily mistaken from a sparrow, other than that it's usually on its own. But when it comes to breeding season, right about now, you will find them perched, often quite high in bushes, singing their little hearts out. That's introduced you to a few common calls of birds, and when they're singing on their own, that can be quite easy to distinguish them. The problem is when they're all singing at once. So what I'm going to do now is play a little clip of a great tit, and then we'll play a little clip of a dunnock, and then we will play something from Emma in York, who's got a clip of both the dunnock and the great tit together, so you can see how they're layered on top of each other and how you might tease the sounds apart. In last week's episode, I draw your attention to an event that St. Nick's was encouraging people to do, which is the Dawn Chorus Watch. So getting up half an hour, maybe an hour before sunrise, and listening out, maybe recording some audio of what you hear. We've had quite a lot of people do this already, and here are just some examples. We've got Glenn, who got up early and went out and recorded lots of birdsong. The main bird that's making all that noise does sound like a great tit, but it might be a thrush imitating a great tit, so I'm not going to place any bets on it, but I'm leaning towards great tit. And we've also had this clip from Emma in York, who recorded this, and it's a massive soundscape, a rich tapestry of birdsong. I'm struggling to tease apart what is what, so if you do recognise any, let us know. There's definitely blackbirds in there, definitely blackbirds. And if you'd like to have a go at this, absolutely encourage it. Send in your results to myself or the St. Nick's team, and I'll pop a link in the video description on YouTube. Next week, our theme will take a break from birds, and we're going to try a little bit of bee identification. There are quite a lot of bees out and about, as we can see from this photo from a verna from St. Nick's. She's found what looks like a buff-tailed bumblebee queen. So queen because it's quite big and chunky. It's got two dark yellow stripes, one on the thorax, the middle section, one on the abdomen, the rear section, and it's got this beigey, orangey tail. And often in bumblebees, you have to look at their bum. Think bumblebee, bum. Look at the bum, look at the tail for the colour, amongst other things. But we'll discuss more of that next week. We've also got an amazing video sent in by Simon and Judith from Kent. I don't know if you remember the hairy-footed flower bees that we've talked about previously. These are solitary bees that come in two colours. You've got black for the females, orangey brown for the males, and Simon and Judith found looks like a load of them nesting in one particular area, so the ground nesting bees. So check out this video. That brings us to the end of this week's episode of Socially Distant Discover Nature. Now, if you're seeing stuff out and about, you want to send us some photographs, some little video clips, even sort of little messages of yourself telling people what you've seen out and about, or even, because it's an ecotherapy video, what you do to remain grounded, to remain calm during this difficult time. Now, my friend has told me that he likes to do the washing up as if it was Tai Chi. Each movement very slowly, carefully, deliberately, and it's very calming, very grounding. So by all means, send in anything you want. If you're a Discover Nature participant, send it to the usual address. If you're anyone else, you can reach us on Twitter at eco_sapien, or you can send stuff in to our email address, which is ecosapienshow@gmail.com. Thank you very much. I'm very sorry about the blank wall. I will maybe get a poster for next time if the wind is still against us, but it does mean that in arm's reach I have not only an armadillo, but also a sonic screwdriver. Goodbye! Come on, Beaky. Come on, Beaky. No sponsorship deal yet. Royal Mail has 5-day delays on some deliveries, so maybe the letter is still in the post.